David DeFuria is a former State Department official. He was a foreign policy advisor during the 2008 presidential campaign to candidate Barack Obama. David, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I think let's just begin at the Susan Rice story. Very telling that she would go on television just recently and lie right to camera and say, I knew nothing about that. Why would she lie about that?
I don't know why she would lie about that, and we don't know that she lied. And perhaps some of what she was asked to talk about was classified. We know she can't talk about that. But I think it's helpful to your audience to break down in phases what happened here and look at the legality of each thing. So there was surveillance of Russian agents, including the Russian ambassador. That's okay. In fact, that's what the U.S. is supposed to do. Surveil Russia. They surveil us. They try to get information about us. We try to get information about them. Now, secondly, there were certain U.S. citizens caught up in that surveillance. There was incidental collection of their conversations or discussions about them. That includes some Trump campaign officials. That's okay, too. That's going to happen. Now, they're supposed to remain masked. In this case, they were unmasked, and we know from the story today that Susan Rice requested the unmasking of some of them. Now, you have to look at what are the criteria for unmasking. And there are two basic criteria. One, do you need to know the name of the U.S. citizen in order to understand the intelligence? Or two, does the intelligence suggest that the U.S. citizen may be involved in some criminal activity? Now, we know now from Director Comey of the FBI that there's an ongoing criminal investigation of the Trump campaign and the cooperation, potential cooperation between Trump officials and Russia. So therefore, there could be a very good reason for this unmasking. We need to find out.
There might be. Is there a good reason for the spying that had nothing to do with the Russia investigation, which we now know encompassed an awful lot of surveillance of apparently Trump himself and his associates? What could possibly be the justification for that during a presidential campaign?
Well, we don't know that. That has not come out. No one has suggested
well, actually, Fox News is reporting that a lot of this material had nothing at all to do with that Russia investigation. So again, in the middle of a presidential campaign, when you have one party which is seeking to defeat another party, for the party in power to use its intel gathering capacity against the other party seems way out of bounds, legal or not, doesn't it?
Tucker, we have to look at each surveillance and the communication that happened in that surveillance. Now, surveillance doesn't just happen with Russia. It happens with agents of other countries as well. There are lots of countries around the world. Lots of countries have agents here. So all sorts of conversations could have been surveilled. And Trump campaign officials could have been caught up in that, too. So we have to look at each incident of unmasking.
No, but
and you have to apply the two criteria that I mentioned.
But it's not simply about the unmasking. It's the fact of the spying. It's the fact that during a presidential campaign, the Obama administration was spying on the people around Donald Trump. And again, we're reporting today it was not all about Russia. So that's obviously a mystery we haven't solved. But I'm just saying, not the legal questions. Everything is legal in Washington, as you know. Everything is legal. NSA collects everything, and it's legal. Fine. Is it ethical? Is it moral? Would you want it to happen to you?
I do not agree with the premise that the Obama administration was spying on the Trump campaign. This was incidental collection that was part of the normal surveillance that goes on. This surveillance actually started under the Bush administration. President Bush
the incidental collection.
This
so basically what you're saying, so under the Trump administration, let's say we find out virtually every leader in Congress speaks to officials from foreign governments all the time. Let's just pick Chuck Schumer. We could pick any of them.
Sure.
And we're going to spy on the government officials with whom we know Chuck Schumer speaks. And, oh, my gosh, we just collected confidential information on Chuck Schumer. And then we're going to pass that up to chain and to various intelligence agencies, State Department, and then we're going to leak it to the press. Is that okay?
But you're putting this backwards. We are surveilling foreign agents of foreign countries, especially foreign countries that happen to be enemies of the U.S. or pose a threat to the U.S. If someone like Chuck Schumer happens to talk to those people, that information is going to be collected. Now, unless Chuck Schumer is engaging in improper activities or we suspect Chuck Schumer to be involved in criminal activity, his name should remain masked, unless we have to know his name to understand the intelligence.
But why
now,
would
my guess is
Rice
there were lots of conversations that were surveilled that involved Trump campaign officials that were not unmasked, but certain ones were unmasked.
I've heard this explanation from the very beginning. This is just what we do. It's totally cool. But wouldn't someone inside the Obama White House with deep political experience and knowledge, or maybe Susan Rice, who's one of the president's closest political advisors and friends, say, wait a second, this guy's running a campaign as a Republican for president. Maybe we should pull back. Now, it's being reported tonight by Sarah Carta at Circa that according to NSC records, her interest in the surveillance began in July when he got the nomination and accelerated throughout the election cycle till November. That looks political to me. Doesn't it to you?
I mean, you're insinuating that's why Susan Rice did this.
I'm not insinuating. I'm asking why in the world could she possibly be unmasking the names of people in a campaign against her preferred candidate?
Well, Tucker, put this in context. We know that Russia was engaging in hacking in the U.S. in order to interfere with the election.
We do know that.
All 17 of our intelligence agencies have said that Russia was engaging in hacking. And that hacking started before July.
Stop. You brought this up, and you act as if we all know this. And I don't think we all do know this, actually. Because for all the evidence that's been thrown out there and all the leaking, the underlying evidence of the alleged crimes that justify all of this spying, they're being close held by the Obama people. You saw today an Obama official on television saying, I can't discuss the underlying evidence. Why is that when they can discuss everything else? What is this underlying evidence we all assume exists? What is this based on?
Well, no official with classified information can discuss that classified information. So
you tell that to Mike Flynn.
Well, if you want to talk about Mike Flynn, I mean, Mike Flynn lied to Vice President Pence about the nature of his conversation
to Pence is now a crime, and you get to reveal confidential information if you lie to Mike Pence?
No, that was improper. And I'm glad you brought this up, because there's a fourth phase to this, which is some of this information, including the fact that people were unmasked, was leaked. The fact that that was leaked, that is improper. And I agree with you that those who leaked information, probably broke the law, and they should be investigated too.
What's this about? What's this about?
I'll tell you what it's about.
We all assume that we know Russia hacked the election, and I'm just asking you, why has not one person, not one, and I do this every single night, characterized what exactly that means? I'm getting very frustrated. I don't know what it means to hack an election. I don't know exactly what they did that would constitute a crime so severe that you'd have to spy on the Trump campaign to prove it.
Tucker,
what is that
They hacked into the DNC's emails, and they leaked those emails out in a strategic way to impact the election.
Why won't
all of our intelligence
agencies? How do you know that?
Because every single one of our intelligence agencies have said that. Director Comey has said that.
They said that. They said that.
No, actually, then. And if you don't trust them,
maybe you can answer this question. I asked the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff of Burbank, California, can you look me straight in the face and say that you have evidence that the Russian government hacked John Podesta or the DNC email accounts? And he declined to do that. So I just want to know, unless you and I have to go on faith, we have to trust politicians in a political system on faith, why don't we get some evidence that any of this actually happened? Why do we all have to sort of nod and say, oh, yeah, it must have happened because, like, the Washington Post says it happened? Where's the evidence?
I don't know why Adam Schiff would tell you that. Maybe because the information he knows is classified. But all of our intelligence agencies have reported that Russia did hack into the DNC emails. If you talk to DNC officials, they'll also tell you they knew within a few days after their email system had been hacked that it was Russia. They hired experts.
That it was the Russian government.
Knew it was the Russian government and agents of the Russian government. And if you don't care about that, then
but I do. I care enough to ask real questions.
Then you're not worried about the sanctity of our democracy, which Russia.
I care enough to ask real questions because I have learned in 30 years here, don't take it on faith, get the facts. And I'm waiting for a single fact, just one, from any of these fabled 17 intelligence agencies. How about Coast Guard intelligence? They're one of the agencies you're referring to. Maybe they could come on the show and give me just one scintilla of evidence that the Russian government, not some Russian, but the Russian government of Vladimir Putin broke into John Podesta's emails. Well, that's for the express purpose of getting Donald Trump elected president.
I'm sure you would agree with me that we need a special commission to investigate a neutral, fair commission. And
it's just a talking point.
Why wouldn't you agree with that?
How about people?
Don't you believe this is important? I know you don't think it happened, but don't you think it's important for us?
I'm not saying it didn't happen. Okay? I'm merely saying if we're going to destroy the lives of people and surveil American citizens, we're going to break the basic bond of trust between government and citizen. They're watching me without my knowledge, look at my email, listening to my phone calls. Whoa, because we need to get the bottom of this Russia thing. I'm just asking for one person to give me one piece of evidence that this Russia thing actually happened, and nobody will. And that's very telling, don't you think?
Well, the evidence is coming out slowly.
Well, where is it?
But
we've got two intel committees who are supposed to be in charge of this stuff, and they haven't provided anything for the public to assess. Why?
Senator Mark Warner is the ranking member on Senate Intelligence. He said last week that he's reviewed a lot of information. It gives him a great concern. He thinks this is the most important thing he has ever worked on.
I'm sure he believes that.
Now,
but again, for the third time, there are No Republican. I'm not flacking for the Republicans. They haven't either. And I just want that fact. And I'm just surprised as a citizen, you wouldn't be a little more skeptical and ask for some facts to back up.
Can I tell you what a Republican says? Senator McCain, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, a Republican, says we need a special commission to investigate this in a fair,
I'm glad that Senator McCain feels that way. But I'm saying, as a co-equal citizen
why not
of this
take
country,
his recommendation for that? You're a great journalist.
So
you're asking the right questions.
Because I'm a journalist,
and you're skeptical, but you would recognize that journalists need to investigate this, right? It's important enough that we should investigate it and get the answers that you don't think we have yet.
So if John McCain says it, then we all have to sort of nod in bovine assent and be like, oh my God. Well, I think it is. And I am a journalist, and all I'm asking for is one piece of evidence that the core crime occurred, the crime being used to justify spying on American citizens. And I think as a liberal, you would say, hey man, I'm concerned about spying on American citizens.
Nobody, even most Republicans, denies that a crime occurred.
Most Republicans thought they were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
Russia hacked into DNC's emails. That is a crime. Hacking is a crime. We also know they were engaging in other activities to try and interfere with our election. And what's important is we protect the sanctity of our democracy.
I couldn't agree more. And what I'm saying as a journalist and an American is give me some evidence or stop talking. That's my view. Great to see you, David.
Thank you.
Well, for months, our betters in the press and government have told us to fear Russia. The Kremlin hacked our election, whatever that means, and we're supposed to be upset about it and afraid. Okay, Russia's bad. But now we've learned something worse and far scarier. Our own government has violated the civil liberties of Americans in ways that would have been unimaginable even 10 years ago. And tellingly, hardly anyone in official Washington seems especially upset about it, much less shocked at all. Consider what we just learned about National Security Advisor under Barack Obama, Susan Rice. Just weeks ago, Rice went on television and lied, telling PBS she, quote, knew nothing about the incidental intelligence collection on Donald Trump and his associates. As it turns out, though, Rice knew quite a bit about that. We now know that she participated in the monitoring of the Trump campaign and the transition. Now, strikingly, many of the communications she and the Obama administration monitored were apparently unrelated in any way to the investigation into Russia. An investigation, you'll remember, that is, as of today, so far, the only excuse offered for the monitoring. So what exactly were the Obama people doing spying on the Trump people? And by the way, let's drop the silly euphemisms. Monitoring the conversations of your political opponents and then trampling measures designed to protect their identities isn't incidental collection. It's not normal above-board behavior. It is spying. Now we're told that Rice's behavior probably wasn't illegal, in fact, nor was the surveillance that preceded it. U.S. law gives tremendous latitude to the intelligence agencies to surveil Americans, as well as to the White House and officials there who claim they need to see that information and pass it along to other parts of government. That's supposed to reassure all of us, but it shouldn't, because what it means is that our laws currently provide no serious protection to U.S. citizens from being spied upon for political reasons by their own government. And worse, it actually happens. In fact, it just happened. And that is the scandal here.
But we begin with Chief White House correspondent John Roberts and a familiar name from the Obama administration surfacing in yet another scandal. Good evening, John.
James, good evening to you. 2 weeks ago, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee announced to the press and the president that he had uncovered a disturbing trend of intelligence collection on Trump officials, some of which was made public. Others which remain known to administration officials. Today, we learn more about the how and the who of what's going on. Multiple sources tell Fox News that President Obama's National Security Advisor Susan Rice was the one who requested the names of Trump officials be unmasked in intelligence reports that were collected during the campaign and transition. The White House, which has access to intelligence logs that allegedly show Rice was behind the unmasking, was playing coy today.
Does this White House look at what she allegedly requested as a national security issue or a political issue?
Well, I'm not going to, I mean, that's a nice backdoor into the line of questioning. I think until there's a finding of that, I don't want to start getting into the motives, because we still haven't, again, me getting to the motives assumes certain things in fact that I don't think we're ready to go to yet.
Senator Rand Paul today described the revelation as, quote, a smoking gun, in a tweet writing, smoking gun found. Obama pal and noted dissembler Susan Rice said to have been spying on Trump campaign. There is no suggestion that what Rice allegedly requested was illegal. As the president's point person on national security, she had the authority. But in a recent television appearance, she claimed no knowledge of it.
I know nothing about this. I was surprised to see reports from Chairman Yunus on that count today.
Rice has a checkered past when it comes to public statements. She had initially claimed the Benghazi attack was in response to a controversial video and praised Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, who faces a court-martial in May for desertion.
He served the United States with honor and distinction.
In its closing days, the Obama administration scrambled to preserve as much intelligence as it could about Russia and possible collusion with the Trump campaign. Former Obama administration official Evelyn Farkas appeared to acknowledge Trump officials had been the subject of surveillance.
And get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama leaves the administration, because I had a fear that somehow that information would disappear.
The extent of the unmasking became apparent when NSC Intelligence Director Ezra Cohen-Watnick conducted a review of unmasking policy. Sources say he came across many instances where the names of Trump officials had been revealed. He brought that information to the White House counsel, who told him to suspend the review. Cohen-Watnick was the subject of intense media coverage when he was mistakenly identified as one of House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes' sources. Today, the press secretary wondered why the Rice revelations weren't drawing the same attention.
I think that it is interesting the level of, or the lack of interest that I've seen in these developments when it goes in one direction.
While this new information adds another layer of intrigue to everything that went on during the campaign, it still would seem to fall short of proving the president's original claim back on March the 4th that he was being, quote, wiretapped by President Obama. James?
And John, the president entertained a high-level visitor at the White House today. What can you tell us about his meeting with the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi?
Well, President Trump has made it clear that there is going to be a new dawn in relations between the United States and Egypt. President el-Sisi, during the Obama administration, was persona non grata, in part because of his human rights record. President Trump has now met with el-Sisi twice. The first time was at the Plaza in New York City back in September. The president believes that the U.S. needs an ally with a strong hand in the Middle East, and el-Sisi is in solidarity with President Trump when it comes to his desire to destroy ISIS. James?
John Roberts at the White House tonight. John, thank you.
Iraqi forces are still hammering away at ISIS-controlled areas of western Mosul, the last major pocket of resistance in Iraq. But their advance has been slow amid a bloody urban insurgent battle and increased civilian casualties. On Monday, General Joseph Dunford, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, landed in Iraq for a first-hand look at the situation. Joining him was Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, on his first overseas trip since the president took office. A Pentagon spokesman says Kushner is traveling on behalf of Mr. Trump to meet with Iraqi leaders and U.S. military personnel. The hope is to accelerate the fight against ISIS while protecting civilians caught in the crossfire.
They are putting their snipers and heavy machine guns on the roofs. This is hard to deal with because we need to protect the civilians.
Meanwhile, in Syria, coalition forces are tightening their siege around the city of Raqqa, the self-proclaimed ISIS capital. The Pentagon says it's considering more deployments to the country. Some plans are calling for an additional 1,000 US troops in northern Syria to stop ISIS fighters before they cross the border.
The United States has profound priorities in Syria and Iraq, and we've made it clear that counterterrorism, particularly the defeat of ISIS, is foremost among those priorities.
Defense Secretary Jim Mattis has given the president his recommendations for defeating ISIS worldwide, but the White House has not yet announced any major change in strategy. In London, Kitty Logan, Fox News.
Back here at home, President Trump will get a chance this week to see if he can cut a deal with China about North Korea. Correspondent Rich Edson is tracking it all from the State Department.
This is one of the Trump administration's most daunting international challenges, halting North Korea's missile and nuclear programs, preventing it from developing a weapon that could strike the United States. And the administration is demanding China, North Korea's most influential ally, to pressure North Korea to abandon these weapons programs.
No longer take the excuses from China that they're concerned too. They need to show us how concerned they are. They need to put pressure on North Korea. The only country that can stop North Korea is China, and they know that.
President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping will discuss North Korea Thursday at the president's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. In an interview with the Financial Times, President Trump said, quote, "China has great influence over North Korea, and China will either decide to help us with North Korea or they won't. The president cited trade issues between the U.S. and China as an incentive for the Chinese to push their North Korean allies. He then added, quote, "Well, if China is not going to solve North Korea, we will. That is all I am telling you." One regional expert says the United States has other options to confront North Korea.
Asking Beijing to use its pressure on North Korea is, I think, a losing strategy. President Bush and President Obama were not able to get China to act because our priorities are different. There are a robust set of sanctions already in place. The regulatory authorities are already in place to issue a significant fine against Chinese banks, and it's really the only solution.
Last month, North Korea dominated much of Secretary of State Rex Tillerson's meetings in Asia. In an exclusive interview with Fox News, standing feet into the North Korean side of the demilitarized zone, the secretary refused to rule out Japan and South Korea obtaining nuclear capabilities to counter North Korea.
But not ruling out either of those options, sir?
Nothing has been taken off the table.
And while Secretary Tillerson has already met with President Xi in Beijing, President Trump's son-in-law and advisor Jared Kushner is also involved, as several reports claim Kushner has developed high-level relationships with Chinese officials. James.
Rich Edson at the State Department tonight. Thank you, Rich.
Hi, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. Civil war in Congress. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. It is really all about hating Trump, not partisan politics. There's no doubt that Judge Neil Gorsuch is qualified to sit on the Supreme Court, and he will. Confirmation coming on Friday, one way or another. Republicans in the Senate must prevail on the judge, or the entire party and the president will be gravely damaged. And that's exactly what the Democratic Party wants. The strategy is simple: oppose every change the president wants to make, everything he wants to do. Create as much mayhem as possible, then tell the American people that Mr. Trump doesn't know how to govern. And meanwhile, the American people get hammered because worthy persons like Judge Gorsuch are disparaged and innovative policies are sabotaged. I mean, did you watch any of those Gorsuch hearings? I don't want to compare the judge to Jesus, but it was exactly the same thing. Democratic senators acting like Pharisees, trying to trap the judge into saying something controversial, trying to paint the man as someone not worthy of being on the court. Now, fair-minded folks respect sincerely held political differences. I know I do. But political hit jobs are obvious. And that's what those hearings featured. Gotcha questions designed to demean the judge. So we now have an opposition agenda primarily based on hatred, not what's best for the country. Just listen to the rhetoric on the left. It is as vitriolic in the extreme. The Trump haters justify their behavior by saying the president is destroying the country. The issues of illegal immigration, global warming, national security have created fury on the left. And as Talking Point stated last week, moderate Democrats are under heavy pressure to support the hate Trump strategy. It's very interesting to watch Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill declare Judge Gorsuch as being cold, against the regular folks. Missouri is trending Republican these days, so the senator may soon come to regret her stance. Finally, many Republicans opposed President Obama's agenda. There was little common ground there. But 5 GOP senators voted to confirm the very liberal Elena Kagan to the Supreme Court. President Obama got his trade authority, and debt limits were raised. The system was strained under Mr. Obama, but it functioned. Now, political hatred is directly threatening our republic. And we, the people, will pay a huge price if things don't change. That's the memo. Now for the top story, reaction. Joining us from Washington, Charles Krauthammer. Am I overstating things, Doctor?
Yes. Look, I'm sure there's an element of Trump hatred in just about everything the Democrats do on Capitol Hill. But there is nothing like, in the Gorsuch hearing, the level of vitriol that there were in the Bork hearings when Reagan was president, or in the Clarence Thomas hearings when George H.W. Bush was president.
But those men were much, much more conservative than Judge Gorsuch is. And I will grant you...
I don't think you can say that about Clarence Thomas. At the time he was head of EEOC, there was nothing outrageously conservative about him. That was just a political hit job of the first order, and it was all personal.
So do you think, Now, I know you don't, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. The hatred against Ronald Reagan was at the same level as Donald Trump?
I don't. That's why I don't think that this is about hatred of the president. I think this has to do with the fact that Democrats decided, and it began, there's no doubt it began with the Bork hearing. They decided that 200 years of tradition, which was you should generally approve a judge who was, somehow educated, intelligent, experienced.
Yeah, a good record.
Scalia was approved 98-2. The difference ideologically between Scalia and Bork was practically nothing. They decided, however, that the court, they had to have the court, because liberalism is not a majority opinion in the country. It's a minority. It's about 20%. And if you wanted to continue to dominate the way that liberals had, you weren't going to do it through the Congress or the presidency, where the people decide. The only way to do it would be to control the court.
And that's where we are today.
And that's where they went. But it began with Bork. It's not to do with Trump himself or Trump hatred. That's an element.
I can't believe it. You don't see it. Expand it out.
I can't believe you see it.
Okay. Expand it out. Is there anything that Donald Trump has proposed, from a crackdown on illegal immigration, to the wall, to taking regulations away and letting the fossil fuel industry do more, to the pipeline, to national security, to vetting people in countries that can't vet? Is there anything that the Democrats so far have supported? No. Nothing.
Bill,
zero.
Expand this out. If Gorsuch were the nominee and Ronald Reagan were president, or George H.W. Bush were president, do you think the Democrats would be any more accommodating and wouldn't try to bring them down?
I can't answer that. It's a
the
speculative
answer is no.
question. Maybe you're right,
well, so
but you haven't refuted. Look, there isn't anything that Donald Trump campaigned on, anything that the Democrats will support. Not even improving the economy by having a tax cut. All right? Not even that. Not even revamping Obamacare, which has punished working Americans. They are not going to support anything. They hate him. They can't stand his face.
Well, look, I'm glad that there's at least one psychiatrist in our discussion. It appears to be you. You seem to have this direct insight into the motives. I don't know the motives. For some people in the Congress, perhaps yes. For some, no. The Occam's razor, the more parsimonious explanation is this. It makes political sense. The party is enraged. As you know, they lost an election to a guy that they either despise or think unworthy.
That's it. You're saying what I'm saying.
They cannot get over it.
You're saying what I'm saying.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are. Occam's razor and all that. And by the way, that's a tenet where you just boil things down to its simplest form. They are so angry they lost, and they can't stand him.
The problem with your argument is the they that you use is indistinct, can be used for anything.
No, it's the Democratic hierarchy.
The politicians are responding to the threats and the demands of the base. They don't want to be primaried. So you're a Claire McCaskill. You know you're in danger next time you're up for re-election.
She's going to lose because
But you're worried about a primary. Does she hate Trump? I don't know. You don't know. What we know is she wants to be re-elected.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know. And you know what? And another thing, and one more thing before I let you go. The Washington Nationals are Krauthammer's team. The Mets are going to stomp you this year. They're going to beat your butt. Just you
All
heard
I
it here
can say is, so much error, so little time.
All right.
About 7 o'clock this morning, we received an officer assist call here in the 700 block of West Baker Road at the courthouse annex. Our responding officers found Assistant Chief Deputy Clint Greenwood had suffered a single gunshot wound. Our officers rendered aid to him on scene. He was subsequently life flighted to Herman Hospital, where unfortunately he succumbed to his injuries. As far as updates in the investigative process, I really don't have a whole lot to provide for y'all right now, other than the fact that we are following up on some leads. You know, it's going to be a lengthy process for us as we go through the day. I wish I had more to give y'all as far as suspect information or things of that nature, but unfortunately at this point I just don't. Again, all I can stress to you is that we are following up on some leads, and I hope to have a little bit more information this afternoon as our investigation unfolds. But right now at this point, that is really what I have as far as an update goes. I'll answer a few questions at this time, but keep in mind I'm not going to get into a lot of the details about the investigation itself. So please bear that in mind as you ask your questions. I'll take about 5 or 6 questions.
Lieutenant Norris, can you tell us if Chief Greenwood was arriving to work? Was he transporting someone? What exactly was he doing? And was he shot right inside or just outside?
We believe the incident happened outside the courthouse building. Obviously, being 7 o'clock this morning, most likely he was just arriving at work.
Sir, was he the only person in the parking lot at the time?
Was he the only person in the parking lot? Is the question
that piece of information I really can't divulge right now. Okay. Obviously, we're still working the investigative process of it, and there's certain things that we just really don't want to elaborate on.
Can you tell us how long?
At this point, I can't release any information about that, unfortunately. We're working on some leads, I can tell you that much, but it would be premature for me to say anything further than that.
And are the Rangers involved? Are they specifically tracking some individuals down with a specific motive, I guess is what we've been hearing?
Well, what I can tell you is that we have representatives from virtually every agency in the area assisting with our investigation. Obviously, it's a brother law enforcement officer that was shot and killed this morning. You know, any death is tragic, but it's even more tragic when somebody that's sworn to protect the public has their life tragically shortened. We have representatives from the Texas Rangers, DPS, Harris County Sheriff's Department, the Gulf Coast Violent Offenders Task Force, Baytown Police Department, obviously, Precinct 3 Constables Department as well, all doing their part to further this investigation to try to bring this person to justice.
Is there surveillance video? Do you know if you're looking for a man or a woman?
As with any investigation, we're always looking for any kind of video that there may be. My crime scene folks are working on that right now, trying to see if there's anything that we can uncover in the way of video. Right now, I don't have anything that I can provide you as far as a video goes.
Lieutenant, when it comes to safety for people who live around here and have concerns, they hear the choppers, they know that y'all are still searching, what do you have to say to them?
Well, what I can say to them is just to know that there's a lot of law enforcement in the area. We're doing everything that we can to track down this person that committed this crime and bring them to justice. We don't want anybody to feel like they're prisoners in their home or prisoners in their workplace or anything of that nature. I think in this general area, you know, there's a lot of law enforcement presence. With that said, obviously we have somebody that took the life of a law enforcement officer. So there's always, you know, caution from that aspect of it.
Can you tell us if it was a target, if he was the target, or if it was just a random incident?
No, ma'am, I can't say one way or the other at this point. Okay, one more question.
And as far as, was he shot at close range, or do you believe he was shot from further away? Again,
that's one of those details I'm not going to divulge right now, okay?
But you do have some sort of thought about motive? I mean, it sounds like you guys are developing. So you don't have to tell us what the motive is, but it sounds like you have some working theories. Would that be accurate?
Well, there's always working theories as you go through an investigation, okay? But to speak specifically about what a motive would be at this point in time would be premature on my part.
Reaction to all of this, former special assistant to President George W. Bush, Scott Jennings. Scott, what do you make of all of this?
Well, I think it's a political bombshell. The Democrats want this to be a clean issue. You know, the Trump team is incompetent. The Trump team doesn't tell the truth. The Trump team does things wrong. But every day we're learning from the Farkas clip, from this Susan Rice revelation today, that the Obama senior management team in national security circles was not immune to having extremely terrible judgment. If this lands back in Susan Rice's lap, oh my gosh, what a bombshell this will turn out to be. And I wonder, Neil, is this going to mean we're going to see Obama people in the chair being deposed by congressional committees? The Democrats want all these investigations of Trump people, but now it may be that some Obama people may need to be in the chair to answer for some of the things they apparently did when they were in office.
That's the quickest way these hearings go away, if that's the event. But let me ask you, Scott, about stepping back from this, what the difference is between being surveilled and, as the president alleged a couple of weeks ago, that he was actually tapped, his phones were tapped directly by President Obama.
Yeah, this does not necessarily make his tweet true. It does, however, give some credence to what might have been on his mind at the time, which was they were listening to us and then they were unmasking the people that were associates of us. So I don't doubt that the president might have been told by somebody, hey, they were looking into us, and he may have interpreted that incorrectly, and that may have led to sending out an incorrect tweet. So it doesn't necessarily make those tweets true, but it does muddy the waters on this story. The Democrats have wanted this story to unfold in such a way that makes Donald Trump appear as though he were flat making something up, you know, on some Saturday morning in the White House. But that's clearly not the case. He was clearly told something. Something clearly happened in the upper reaches of the Obama administration. That's going to muddy the waters, and it's going to stop Democrats from being able to portray Donald Trump in the way they wanted to when this story started.
You know, James Comey, the FBI, apparently, and you've heard the stories, had enough intelligence to believe that the Russians were, you know, mucking around in our election last fall. And the president heard that, his staff heard that, and then opted not to do any follow-up with that, but might have been so alarmed by these developments themselves where it would not be a stretch to assume that they wanted to clamp down on this or look more into this. What do you think of that, and whether the irony would be that while not directly tapping phones, they were certainly looking at all the Trump people and everything they were saying and doing?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Regarding when President Obama reported to the American people that he thought the Russians were mucking around in the election, it really came too late. I mean, think about it. If you were the President of the United States and you really thought a foreign power was mucking around in our election and you chose not to disclose that until after the election, I mean, if you were a Democrat political operative, someone who supported Hillary Clinton, or one of her advisors, Hillary Clinton herself, how angry must you be that the president might have been sitting on information that could have changed the trajectory of the election? I think Democrats should be upset with Obama for not disclosing information that he believes he had at the time. And now Democrats really ought to be upset with Obama's people, because what they've done with this Susan Rice stuff today is they've injected a serious storyline here of malfeasance, possibly, certainly bad judgment at the upper reaches of the Obama White House. The press, the mainstream media, the Democrat political operatives out there, they want this to be a clean story about Donald Trump doing bad stuff or his associates being dishonest. This story may prove something we all learned on the school ground. If you want to push somebody down into a mud hole, you may wind up getting splashed yourself, and it looks like that's what's going to happen to the Democrats on this issue.
Well, they're both getting messed up in the process. Scott Jennings, thank you. Good seeing you.
Senator, the real the real lack of precedence here, it's never happened before in over 200 years. A partisan Democratic Party that will not allow an up or down vote because they know they'll lose. So, what do you think happens?
Well, Sean, you're exactly right. You know, you played some of those early clips of Democrats talking about the need to have an up or down vote on Supreme Court justices, and they were very persuasive. I think they're right. We're going to have an up and down vote on Judge Gorsuch, and this week, Judge Gorsuch will be confirmed as the next Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. And you know, that really is a victory for the American people. This last election, as you know, was in many ways a referendum on what sort of justice would replace Justice Antonin Scalia. Hillary Clinton promised a liberal activist, and Donald Trump promised a principled constitutionalist like Judge Neil Gorsuch. This week, we're going to see that promise delivered upon as Judge Gorsuch gets confirmed.
Well, it's funny how Schumer tries to shift the blame to the Republicans when he's doing something that's never happened, and that is he's filibustering an up or down vote, so it's really him that's doing it. All right, let me move on. I know you've been very active and very supportive, coming up with creative solutions and meeting with a lot of people as it relates to health care. From my perspective, getting it right is far more important than any artificial timetable. What do you see happening in the process right now?
Well, Sean, you're exactly right. When it comes to repealing Obamacare, in my view, failure is not an option. For 6 years, Republicans have been promising the American people, if you elect us, we will get this done. And I think we have got to get the job done. You know, it took Obama 14 months to pass Obamacare. The House bill was on the floor just 18 days. 18 days was not long enough. And we can get this done in a way that actually fixes the problem. If you look at members on both sides within the party, I'm spending virtually every moment, night and day, meeting with House members, meeting with senators, meeting with the administration, trying to get people to yes. And people want to get to yes. Conservatives want to get to yes. Moderates want to get to yes. And we can get this done. And, Sean, I'll tell you, the central test for success is going to be whether we drive down the cost of premiums. We need to make health insurance more affordable so people can afford to get care for their families. If we do that, we will have succeeded. If we don't, we will have failed.
Senator, it's about two simple things. Nobody cares about the Byrd rule, cloture, reconciliation. What they care about are lower premiums and better health care.
Exactly.
And you're working with all these varying groups. You're even working with moderates and conservatives. Everybody knows, I guess, that they can't get everything they want, right?
No, I think that's exactly right. And the players want to get to yes. If we set our goal, how do you lower health insurance premiums? There are a lot of tools, and we know what those tools are. The most important is addressing the Obamacare insurance mandates. You know, under Obamacare, there are a dozen mandates that are the prime driver for premiums skyrocketing. The House bill just repealed 2 of those 12. It left 10 of the 12 Obamacare mandates in place. That doesn't make any sense because it makes health care unaffordable. There are other tools we have, things like enabling people to purchase across state lines, things like association health plans. You're exactly right. Or letting people pay premiums from health savings accounts, which means you're using pre-tax dollars. All of those are consensus ideas that bring together conservatives, bring together moderates, and
that's what the president promised. Good point.
That is exactly right.
One of the things I've been hearing, you and the president are really getting along very well. I know in the last 2 weeks, 2 Ted Cruz bills were signed into law by the president. Tell us about the relationship.
Well, the president and I are talking frequently. We're talking on the phone. We're meeting frequently. And I'm doing everything I can to help lead the fight for President Trump and all of us in Congress to deliver on the promises we made to the American people. We've got an historic opportunity. I think in 2017, we are poised to do 4 big things. To repeal Obamacare, to pass fundamental tax reform, to see major regulatory reform, and to confirm a strong conservative to the Supreme Court. If we do those 4, 2017 is a blockbuster year. And so I'm spending my time rolling up my sleeves, trying to get the job done. You're right, in the last 2 weeks, President Trump signed 2 bills I authored. One, the NASA authorization bill, which puts our space program on a strong and growing platform going forward. And then number 2, a bill that enables states to require drug testing for unemployment benefits. Both of those are very important and major victories for the state of Texas.
I got to tell you, Senator, this is an important time for the country, and so much hangs in the balance. We've got to stop this precipitous decline. Thank you for the work you're doing. Great to have you back. Good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Good to be